We hope and pray that no other woman or family will have to go through what our beautiful daughter has gone through, or that no other family will have to go through this cruel, sad experience that we have gone through. These words were the silent cry of a devastated family in the wake of a young woman. Lorraine Cox went out with friends one night. Throughout the night, there was laughter, drinks, and conversation. But every good moment comes to an end. That night, Lorraine left her friends and started walking home. Silent streets, dim street lights, and cameras recording everything were the last witnesses to see her. The dark truth behind this disappearance was hidden not only in police records, but also in the frozen images of security cameras. So what had happened to Lorraine, and who was at the center of this mystery? The details of this heartbreaking story will plunge you into a deep silence. Lorraine Cox was a 32-year-old young woman living in the city of Exeter. On the outside, her life was ordinary, but everyone who knew her said the same thing. Lorraine was not ordinary. She was full of life. She loved to help people. She was deeply devoted to her family and loved and trusted by her friends. She was sociable, outspoken, and always radiated positive energy. As one friend put it, when he entered a room, he could change the mood just by smiling. You rarely meet people like that. Lorraine was fond of art and music. In her free time, she liked to take walks and spend time in small cafes in the city. His favorite thing to do was to chat with his friends, to appreciate being together. I want to tell her story not just as an event. We need to tell it as the story of a human being, a friend, a sister, and a son. And perhaps the most crucial question is, how did such a loving person end up in such a dark end? On the night of September 1st, 2020, everything seemed ordinary on the streets of Exeter. It was one of the last days of summer. People were out, the pubs were open, and the city was breathing. Lorraine had spent a pleasant evening with close friends, an evening of conversations, laughter, and drinks. It seemed like an ordinary night for her too, but no one knew that night would be Lorraine's last. As the clock struck midnight, Lorraine said goodbye to her friends and walked home. The city center was quiet. The sound of her footsteps echoed on the sidewalks, and the dark streets were silent. She walked with her phone in her hand, sending messages to her friends on social media. When everything was normal, suddenly the signal went dead. She was never heard from again. But the city was not silent. That night, many security cameras were running. Lorraine's last moments were captured on these cameras. Security cameras recorded Lorraine's last steps that night. It was approaching 2 o'clock. Lorraine was walking down High Street towards 4th Street. She was alone in the dark, but she thought she was alone. In the CCTV footage, a man walking just behind Lorraine stood out, a figure she didn't recognize. Azam Mangori. Azam, 23, was living temporarily in Exeter. He was walking the streets that night. His encounter with Lorraine was pure coincidence. At least that's what the footage showed. Another security camera showed Lorraine chatting with Azam. They started walking together. There was no sign of any physical coercion in the footage. Maybe Lorraine had seen Azam before, or maybe she just wanted to talk to someone. But no one knew that Lorraine would never be seen again after those images. These recordings were the last moments Lorraine was seen alive. On the night Lorraine disappeared, as the hours ticked by, her friends became worried at first. However, several hours later, they still hadn't heard from her. Her phone was off and there was no activity on her social media accounts. Following a report of her disappearance, police began their investigation. Lorraine was last seen in an area very close to Exeter city center. Police examined surveillance cameras in this area, and the security footage showed Lorraine walking alone. But in the meantime, the mysterious connections behind her disappearance slowly began to emerge. Security camera footage showed Lorraine walking alone for a while, but shortly afterwards, a man who had been following her approached her and started talking to her. The footage showed that the man followed Lorraine for a while and then approached her and started talking to her. The footage showed two people walking together, talking and then disappearing at some point. Police carefully analyzed security camera footage from Lorraine's neighborhood on the night of her disappearance and afterward. However, it was not possible to find any trace of Lorraine after her disappearance. Her phone was switched off, there were no new messages or activity on her social media accounts, and no record of any ATM or shopping transactions. Thanks to clear footage from surveillance cameras, Azam Mangori was identified as following Lorraine Cox and eventually walking with her. The cameras showed Mangori following Lorraine, then walking up to her, starting to talk to her, and then walking away together. Based on this footage, police identified Mangori and immediately went to work to find the suspect. After some time, it emerged that Mangori was living as an asylum seeker in Exeter. Police raided Mangori's residence and arrested him at his home. After Mangori's arrest, the police began an in-depth investigation. However, they did not get answers to their questions about the murder quickly. The investigation into the disappearance of Lorraine Cox soon revealed a terrible truth. After killing Lorraine, her killer, Azam Mangori, began making plans to dispose of her body. In the days after he committed the murder, he was caught on camera in various shops to get the materials he needed. The items he bought in those days bore the marks of his horrific plan: garbage bags, tape, a suitcase, and an air purifier to hide the smell of the corpse. Mangori had also visited a website entitled How to Dig a Grave by Hand. Impressed by this website, he purchased various digging equipment, such as a trowel. With these materials, he planned to dismember and destroy the body. However, Mangori's plan was quite incomplete. Parts of the body were found in a street near the victim's home and in woodland in Newton St. Isidis, about 9 kilometers away. This allowed the investigating police to delve deeper into Mangori's horrific crime. In his testimony in court, Mangori openly expressed his remorse and fear after the murder. Denied asylum in December 2018 and panicked by fear of deportation, Mangori described his days after killing Lorraine as a living hell. He claimed that the woman he killed had been drinking in her room before she lost consciousness and that she had deliberately taken a mystery drug. Mangori's words not only brought to light the horrific facts behind the murder, but also provided important clues for the investigation in understanding the victim's death and the killer's feelings of remorse. There was silence in the courtroom, months of investigation, countless pieces of evidence and testimony. It was the end. Azam Mangori, sitting in the dock, was found guilty of murder by the jury. In announcing his verdict, Mr. Justice Garnham said, "Instead of informing anyone of his death, you kept his decomposing body in your bedroom for 8 days. Mangori strangled Lorraine Cox to death, hid her body in his bedroom for some time, then dismembered it and dumped it in woodland and rubbish bins. CCTV footage captured the items he bought to dispose of her body, including suitcases, bags, tape, and air purifiers." The judge continued, "I accept that you did not plan this murder, but the way you ended Lorraine's life and then dismembered her was only to prevent your actions from being discovered." Mangori's aim was to deceive Cox's family and friends. He used her social media accounts to send messages to distract people by saying she was fine. But Lorraine had already lost her life. At the end of the judgment, Judge Garnham said, "Mr. Mangori, you took the life of an intelligent and vibrant woman who had her whole life ahead of her. Your attempt to conceal her death has deepened the pain her family has suffered. The court sentenced Azam Mangori to life imprisonment. He was ordered to spend at least 20 years in prison before being eligible for parole. For Lorraine's loved ones, this might have been a small consolation of justice, but her absence would always leave a void. Lorraine Cox's story ends here. Her silent walk led to the revelation of a dark truth and left behind an indescribable pain, not only for their loved ones, but for everyone who listens to this story. Some losses cannot be expressed in words, but remembering them is the only way to keep their voices alive.